Long before the name Sumer or Egypt meant anything, before pyramids cut into desert skies, or Viyamanas roared across ancient India, there was water. Endless, roaring, living water. And somewhere in that endless blue, there was a continent. A land of vast wisdom, radiant temples, and skyborn memory. Its name was Lemuria. You won't find Lemuria on any modern map. It's not officially. Science calls it a myth and old theory, born of misunderstood biology and misplaced geology. But across the world, from the high temples of India to the mystic shores of Polynesia, the memory of Lemuria persists, not as fiction, but as history. In the 19th century, zoologists puzzled over an odd mystery. Lemursteiny primates existed in both Madagascar and India, but not in Africa or the Middle East between them. To explain this, they proposed a sunken landmass stretching across the Indian Ocean, Lemuria. But what started as a scientific hypothesis quickly transformed. Mystics and ancient scholars stepped in with their own stories older than Darwin, older than geology, older than memory. In the sacred texts of India, there is talk of Kumari Kandama, lost land south of India, submerged by cataclysm, where a once great civilization thrived. Its people were said to have possessed incredible knowledge: astronomy, medicine, energy, language. They built cities of light. They communicated with the stars. Sound familiar? The Tamil legends claim that when Kumari Kandam sank beneath the waves, its survivors scattered, reaching as far as Egypt, Sumer, and even South America. A seafaring exodus. A civilization broken not by war, but by water. And with them, they carried not just tools, but memory. Is it possible that Lemuria, whatever its original name was the true motherland of civilization? The missing link that came before all others? We've seen it before. Atlantis, Mu, Hyperborea. The story repeats. A great civilization rises, gains divine or alien knowledge, then disappears, swallowed by time or nature. But Lemuria stands out, because its fingerprints are still visible, if you know where to look. Let's travel east. Deep into the Pacific, there far from any continent, lies Easter Island, known to its native people as Rapa Nui. This lonely speck of land holds one of the world's greatest mysteries. The Moai massive stone heads, some 30 feet tall, weighing up to 80 tons. How were they moved? Why were they made? And most importantly, who built them? Mainstream archaeologists claim they were carved by Polynesians with stone tools, but local legends say something else. The builders of the Moai were a different people, tall, pale-skinned, with red hair. They came from across the sea, bringing wisdom and tools that could lift stones with sound. And then, the statues don't just sit randomly. They line up with celestial paths, facing the rising sun or gazing toward constellations. It's as if the Moai weren't just monuments, but messages, coordinates, warnings. Could the Rapa Nui people be descendants of Lemuria's survivors? Could Easter Island have been one of their last outposts, a place where memory was carved in stone, before the ocean swallowed the rest? It's not the only place. Throughout Polynesia, legends tell of gods descending from the sky in fiery canoes, of floating islands, of stars that sang at night. In Hawaii, the term Mu refers to a lost land from which the first people came, led by skyborn chiefs and glowing beings. Massive stone cities like Nanmadol rise from the sea on artificial islands built with basalt columns weighing hundreds of tons, somehow transported across miles of ocean with no known tools. No one knows who built them. Local legend says the structures were placed by beings who flew through the air. Again and again we find the same story: lost lands, advanced knowledge, sky gods, and cataclysms. But all roads seem to lead back to the ocean, to a world that once connected them all, to Lemuria. And here's where it gets stranger. The Siddha texts of ancient India, system of mystical science practiced long before modern yoga, claim that the early masters of the world came from a submerged land beyond the southern seas. These Siddhas weren't just sages. They were alchemists, time-benders, and star readers. They possessed the ability to fly without machines. They could heal, vanish, reappear. They lived for hundreds of years. One verse reads, "When the land beneath us drowned, we rose into the sky." When the sky burned, we moved into the deep. When the deep fell silent, we returned as wind, as thought, as fire. Is this poetic nonsense or testimony? And who were we? Perhaps Lemuria wasn't just a continent, it was a bridge. A link between mankind and the sky beings. A global civilization that remembered its origins and tried to preserve them. Maybe they didn't build pyramids to reach the heavens. Maybe they built to mark where the heavens touched earth and when their time ended. When waves devoured temples and stars fell from the sky, the survivors left signs, in stone, in myth, in blood, and the rest. Sank, gone from maps, but not from memory. When the oceans rose and Lemuria fell, the silence was not complete. For across the endless blue, survivors fled. Their continent may have crumbled, but their memory did not. It sailed in stone canoes, on starlight navigation, through whispers carried by wind and wave. They didn't just vanish, they migrated. And their path, if you follow it, leads across the Pacific. All the way to the soaring peaks and ancient stone cities of South America. It begins with Easter Island. As we saw, the Moai are more than statues, they're stargazers. Silent sentinels carved by hands whose origins are still debated. But their style, their spirit, even their methods of construction bear eerie resemblance to something on the other side of the ocean. Welcome to Peru. Specifically, Pumapunku and Tiwanaku, in the highlands of Bolivia, places so remote, so elevated, and so ancient that their original builders are unknown. What we find there is nothing short of mind-bending. Massive blocks of andesite stones, some weighing over 100 tons, cut with laser-like precision. Jigsaw puzzle pieces locked without mortar, so tightly fitted that even a razor blade can't slide between them. Angled cuts, magnetic alignments, internal channels, all created without the wheel, without iron tools, and allegedly without writing. To this day, no one can explain how these structures were made. Not by the Inca, not by pre-Inca cultures. Because the site predates them, all possibly going back 12,000 years or more. Even more shocking, some of the stonework in Peru and Bolivia is nearly identical to what we see on Easter Island. It's not just stylistically, but in method. The way the blocks are carved, the way the faces are shaped, even the ceremonial platforms, the star alignments, the solar tracking systems, they all point to a shared origin, a common teacher. Could these have been the Lemurian refugees, a seafaring civilization that, after losing their homeland, spread knowledge across the Pacific Rim? Let's follow their trail. In Peru's highlands, the Nazca lines stretch across the desert floor, geometric patterns. Vast animals and what appear to be landing strips carved with such precision, they can only be seen from the air. Were they made as offerings? Maps, messages to the sky? Local legends speak of sky visitors, or Viracaka, the bearded white-robed god who came from the sea, bringing light and law. He's often depicted with a staff in each hand, surrounded by rays of light, much like depictions of deities across Polynesia and Mesoamerica. Viracaka was said to have traveled the Andes, rebuilding after a great flood. He taught agriculture, language, astronomy. When his work was done, he left not by foot, but by walking across the ocean. Is he myth or memory? Could he have been one of the last Lemurians, or even an emissary of the sky beings who once walked with them? Move north, and the same stories appear. In Central America, the Olmecs, Maya, and Aztecs all spoke of star gods, bearded visitors, and civilizations wiped out by flood and fire. Their pyramids, like those at Teotihuacan, align perfectly with the Pleiades, Orion, and the solstices. Their myths speak of flying serpents, sky battles, and humans molded from divine essence. In Polynesia, the Maori tell of Cupe, who crossed the Pacific guided by stars and light from the heavens. The Samoans speak of Tegaloa, a creator from the sky who built the earth like a machine layer by layer. And in Hawaii, legends of Mu describe a homeland that sank after its people grew arrogant and defied the gods. The same story, everywhere. A lost land. A flood, survivors, stars, and it doesn't end with myth. Under the ocean, scattered across the Pacific Rim, lie ruined structures not yet explained, and in some cases, barely acknowledged. Near Yonaguni off the coast of Japan, Divers discovered a massive stone structure with terraces, stairways, and right-angled platforms all beneath the waves. Some say it's a natural formation. Others swear it's the sunken temple of an ancient civilization, possibly over 10,000 years old. Further south, in the Bay of Cambay near India, sonar scans revealed a vast underwater city, complete with roads, buildings, and even tools submerged under silt and sea. Mainstream archaeologists argue over its dating, but some evidence suggests it's older than any known civilization in India. Off the coast of Cuba, researchers found what appears to be a city gridstone, blocks in pyramidal shapes resting nearly 2,000 feet beneath the sea. What if these are the remnants? Not of isolated cultures, but of one global seafaring people who knew the stars, mapped the earth, and understood energy in ways we're only beginning to grasp. What if Lemuria was not a place in isolation but a network? A civilization with outposts, relay points, star portals, bridge between worlds, one physical, one cosmic. And here's the final twist. The Polynesian migration routes, the traditional paths taken by ancient seafarers, form a sweeping crescent across the Pacific. That same arc, when mirrored and extended, connects to ancient Egyptian trade routes, to the Indian spice paths, even to early Sumerian sea ventures. Did they know? Were they following ancient paths passed down by memory or by map? Some believe the ancients used not just stars, but sound and frequency to navigate, chanting to align themselves with ley lines. Using conch shells and stone markers that vibrated with the Earth's pulse. It sounds mystical, until you realize that many of these structures still sit on electromagnetic anomalies, that birds and whales navigate by magnetic fields, that perhaps in a lost golden age humanity didn't need compasses, they sang their way across the sea. So what happened? Why did it all disappear? Perhaps they were warned. Perhaps the cataclysm came slowly, and the Lemurians scattered to preserve what they could. Some say they left in ships, others say they returned to the stars. But the monuments remain, in stone, in myth, in alignment with constellations above and tectonic plates below, as if whispering, "We were here. We knew the stars. We will return when you remember who you are." Not all ruins are made of stone. Some are made of silence, of dreams, of songs half-remembered from a time before time. When Lemuria sank beneath the waves, its temples crumbled, its cities drowned, and its maps were torn from the skin of the earth. But not everything went under. Some things, the most important things, went deeper, not into the ocean, but into us. The greatest treasure of Lemuria was never its technology or temple site, was consciousness. Many believe Lemurians were not simply advanced, they were awake. They lived not just in harmony with nature, but in resonance with the universe. They spoke through feeling, sang through thought, healed with frequency. Words were not needed when souls could speak. Love was not a feeling, it was physics. They used crystal energy, not for decoration, but for memory storage, for interstellar connection. They worked with light, not wires. They communicated with the stars, not with antennas, but with heart waves. They remembered who they were, where they came from, and where they were going. And then came the forgetting. Lemuria, as many mystics say, didn't fall in fire or flood alone. It fell in frequency, a planetary shift, a vibrational collapse, where unity fractured, where telepathy dimmed, where fear replaced trust. Slowly, heartbreakingly, the Lemurians scattered, some beneath the oceans, some into the inner earth, some back to the stars. But not before planting something, a seed, in us. Not in blood, but in spirit. Have you ever looked at the night sky and felt a sadness you couldn't explain? A longing for somewhere you've never been, but somehow remember? That's the Lemurian seed. A pulse in your DNA that stirs when you hear old languages, when you walk barefoot on stone, when you stand near water under a full moon and feel like you being watched not by eyes but by memory. Across the planet, that pulse is awakening. Modern spiritual circles call it the Lemurian awakening, a rising wave of remembrance, not of facts, but of feeling. People dream of luminous cities, crystal chambers, telepathic families. They feel called to water, to the stars, to healing. They are remembering not what they learned, but who they are. Some say Lemurians encoded their knowledge not in scrolls, but in the human soul. And now, as the earth trembles and the world forgets itself, we begin to remember. Why now? Because the time is turning. The Hopi said a new world would begin after Great Division. The Maya marked this era not as apocalypse, but as rebirth. The Vedic seers spoke of the Kali Yuga, the darkest age, followed by a golden dawn. Not when the world changes, but when we do. It is not coincidence that people around the globe are seeking deeper truth, meditating more, returning to ancient wisdom. It's a frequency shift, the same one Lemurians once faced. But this time, it's not collapse, it's return. Some say survivors of Lemuria didn't all leave, but they live still beneath sacred mountains, deep in inner earth cities like Telos beneath Mount Shasta. And when you're quiet enough, you can feel them. People speak of dreams where beings of glowing light offer guidance, of encounters with star elders who don't speak but resonate, of visions that feel not like fiction but like home. Their message is always soft, always the same. You are not broken. You are not lost. You are rising, just like we once did. And this time, you won't fall. The return of Lemuria isn't about land rising from the sea, it's about ooze rising into memory. Because the Lemurian story isn't just a myth of the past, it's a map for the future. They lived in balance, in song, in light, and maybe, just maybe, we're meant to remember not to rebuild what they had, but to become what they were becoming. Thank you for joining us for all of Episode 4 of Alien Landings Across Ancient Civilizations. In this episode, we followed the trail of Lemuria through sunken ruins, its distant myths, and most importantly, into the core of our own consciousness. Whether fact or fable, Lemuria offers us something real, a mirror to who we once were, and who we still can be.